Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Collective Clicks podcast. This is your host, Brandon Bateman, and today I'm going to be joined by Forrest Blackburn. Forrest is most well known for taking a wholesale company from about $40,000 a month in revenue to $2 million in just about 5 months. He is a fantastic leader, an understander of systems, all these different things that are important to kind of pour the gas on the fire to grow a wholesale company, especially at a national level. So I'm super excited for this podcast episode. We're going to talk about how do you optimize your marketing, even marketing for buyers, which is something a little bit newer to me that I was interested to hear about, and all kinds of other different things regarding split testing and stuff like that. How you doing today, Forrest?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Yeah, doing awesome. Happy to hear you're doing well. You in California or Phoenix now?
I'm actually in Phoenix right now, in Tempe, Arizona, at the Green Elephant Development Office with Cody Sperber. We were doing some podcasts yesterday. Always very high level people. We had Robert Kiyosaki in the office last week, or maybe the week before. That's the cool thing about working with Cody Sperber, is that there's always, I should say, there's never a shortage of very high level people coming through the office door, and that gives me an opportunity to meet and greet and develop relationships and have conversations at extremely high levels that kind of give a different perspective on not just real estate and where the market's going, but just on the world as a whole, and how all the pieces kind of fall into place, and how that affects real estate and market trends, and the ebbs and flows that we're all going through in pivoting through this new world of wholesale that is nothing like it was in 2020, 2021. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you seem to find a way to be surrounded by celebrities in the real estate space somehow, somehow or another. That's been your whole experience.
You know what? I there's little things that I pick up from high level people. I say, there's a phrase that I use a lot, especially in wholesaling, to kind of alleviate the noise on your plate. And a lot of people in the space are working with very small margins. They're picking up these $3,000, $5,000, $7,000 spreads. Um, and I for the longest time, I didn't know who to give credit to on this statement, but I saw something the other day, and ironically enough, it was Donald Trump, and he said the reason that he developed his wealth in real estate, over and above his father giving him a nice head start, um, he looks at everything and he says, the bigger the cookie, the bigger the crumb. And he looks at these larger scale projects because, even at a small margin, those large scale projects give off very good sized crumbs. Um, and Richard Branson and Elon Musk both said, independent of one another, to circle back to your question. Um, and I don't even know if they both know that they said this, but they said that if you want to be a billionaire, your top five friends need to be billionaires. So it's always been something in the back of my mind that, you have to surround yourself by people that know more than you. When I was a kid, I was an actor, and my talent manager at the time, she said, never go into an acting class where you're the best one, because you'll learn the least. So I am always, on I try to be on the lower echelon of the knowledge base in a small room, so that I can soak up and learn and really absorb what these high level people are doing. And it's not necessarily our wins, because we celebrate those, but we learn from our losses. So really getting to be personal with a lot of these bigger, these big players, and working in $1 billion deals and such, enable me to really learn. And in that learning, I can then transcribe that into the different companies that I work for, my own businesses. And so yeah, I try to surround myself with the heaviest of people that I can, because that's where I'm going to learn the most. So it's kind of a thing for me. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So let's dive for anybody that doesn't know you listening to the podcast. I'd love to dive a little bit into your story. What got you here. I can tell you my story of knowing you is that I'd seen you around for a while, and then it wasn't until it was in Houston. I think we were both at an event and got to meet and realized that there's quite a few synergies between what we do and that sort of thing. And I've recommended that some of our clients work with you, I think you've done the same. So anyways, that's kind of how far we go back, but you go back significantly farther than that. Do you want to talk about how you got into this real estate niche?
No, absolutely. I was, I was in the entertainment industry as a kid, and I was an actor, and then I got into music, and I was signed to Capitol Records and toured around and had a lot of fun. But that didn't happen until I kind of took over the band situation. And previous to, having the band that I had that got signed to Capitol Records, everybody was, we were all a band. So everybody had equal input, and there was a lot of infighting. I'm a lead singer and a writer, and amongst the other players, there was all kinds of drama, and so I just figured I'd just nip that in the bud, and I went out and hired people, and really kind of turned it into a business. And that's really when I learned that if you treat things like a business, if you have people in their designated roles, that you can really build something incredible. So fast forward a couple of years, and I got into marketing. I took a step away from the music industry. I was the music supervisor for the UFC out in Las Vegas, and that kind of took me away from being on stage, and it gave me some perspective on a lot of things that I wanted to work on. Previous to that, I was working for Paramount Pictures and doing a lot of their social media marketing. This is back in the MySpace days before Facebook really took off. And so I got into Google marketing and working with small and medium businesses, and I grew a very large company very quickly. From 2010 until about 2019, we built a little more than 50,000 websites and about 24,000 app developments. Everything was full stack development. These were all small, medium businesses in every niche across the country. And grew that from about 7 agents to about 1,500 agents nationwide with 17 franchises, and really kind of, grew a monster. But I started becoming a consultant for a lot of Fortune 100s and 500s and 5,000 companies to kind of scale their business, specifically online. UPS, Travelocity, Disney Cruise Lines, Keller Williams, 1-800-DENTIST. There was a lot of, big companies that I was able to work with. And, in growing their revenue base from a marketing standpoint, and then making sure that there was a sales infrastructure in place to service that influx of good quality leads, it kind of layered a blueprint. It gave a very specific blueprint that really kind of worked in every industry. I was approached by HGTV, specifically Tariq Al-Musa and the show Flip or Flop, to help them really grow the business behind the show. The business needed a lot more houses, a lot more content for the episodes. So I had a big decision to make, to go in and, instead of working for all these separate companies, as kind of a consultant, to go in and for 2 years work with just one specific company. And that was a big decision, but I'm really glad that I did. And the first changes that I made were to really make a hard pivot into wholesale because of the fast cash churn. Flipping has a much longer cash cycle. So with wholesale, you're able to get that fast cash churn and roll that into marketing. And I very quickly got up to, between PPC, TV, radio, pretty much every medium you can think of, I was spending $500,000 a month. But within 5 months of getting there, we went from 40,000 to over $2 million a month in assignment fees. And again, like, we were talking about, it was 2020, 2021. These were much easier times. There was no inventory. Interest rates were on the floor. It was very easy to move properties. A lot of people were overspending on properties because inventory was so low. So things were selling like hotcakes. And, you didn't have to focus so much on your buyer's list, because as long as you had a property, there was going to be a buyer on the other end, because there really weren't that many properties out there. So I grew that company, and rapidly and successfully, leaning on PPC very heavily. PPC weathers all storms. If you're really focused on social media, you have something like a Trump-Biden election, and you cannot get any screen time on Facebook. But PPC, if you search for how do I sell my inherited home, or cash buyers, you're going to always come up in those searches. You're not going to see anything for Trump or Biden for how do I sell my distressed house. So that's always been something that is a constant. And I do a lot with TV and radio as well. But as I got out of that contract, where it was very exclusive, I couldn't work with anybody else or help anyone else. And I had a lot of people knocking on the door looking for guidance and assistance, especially with the numbers that I was doing. And I had, people like Robert Wensley of Investor Lift, touting those numbers because we were using Investor Lift quite heavily on the disposition side. It became widely known, those numbers that we were achieving. So I really made a decision to not renew that contract and become kind of a free agent, so to speak, and be able to help others and kind of pass along the wins and losses that I had using OPM, using other people's money to spend on these marketing campaigns, and then develop sales infrastructure around that influx of inbound leads to cultivate more properties, and also more buyers. As the market has pivoted, I really focus a lot on cultivating more buyers, and buyers that are asking for something right now, not just a buyer that buys things here and there and, oh, they bought properties over in this area 6 months ago. But if you find somebody who's, it's a hot lead when somebody raises their hand and says, I want a property in this area right now, you can really speed up your dispositions process. So I had done a few deals with Cody Sperber. And as soon as I became a free agent, we had a conversation, and I signed a non-exclusive agreement with him to come in and make him my priority and really work with Green Elephant Development to build out their wholesale channel in a pivoting, changing market, which has always been a challenge. But what's really weathered that storm is our PPC, bringing in good quality, high distress, whether it's a distressed property or a distressed seller, leads. And then also targeting our PPC onto cultivating more buyers that are interested in buying right this second, and developing buy boxes and funnels for those buyers. So there's PPC on the entire mechanism, on the front end and on the back end, for both acquisitions and dispositions. And I think that's what's really kept us afloat. And I implore that into all my students. I'm a coach and a mentor now that I'm available to do so. So over the last 8 months, I've cultivated a large base of people that I'm helping, and it's really working. So, and it's able to keep people, to be able to weather this storm through this ever-changing wholesale market that we're in, and a lot of innovations as well. Getting past some of these investors that are offering very low based on fear. But yeah, PPC is always the biggest weathered storm for me. So that's kind of what catches us up to our podcast today.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's great to have you here kind of saying that PPC weathers the storm, because I always think that way. But, nobody believes me because I run a company that does PPC, right? So of course I'm going to say that, right?
No, I hear you. I hear you. I was on your side of things. I was on the marketing side of things, and it is a fine line from people thinking you're doing a sales job or you're actually being transparent and honest. And PPC has always been the most successful thing, and it's not just in real estate. It's in all aspects of business. With Skechers, the shoe company, we grew their online sales by 30% by just implementing tweaks to their PPC campaigns. And this is back in 2012, 2013. But even still, to be able to see that kind of a jump in a company that does that kind of revenue, just by making the right tweaks to the PPC. A lot of people out there, and this is a common mistake, and I'm sure you encounter it. They say, well, I've got PPC, so I don't want to talk about that. It's not really working for me, so I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. Well, that's like saying I have a Ferrari, so I'm not worried about it. But the thing is, it hasn't had an oil change. It hasn't had a fuel filter change. It's not running right. You're never going to win a race. And you're saying, yeah, I don't really care for Ferrari because I can't beat out the Lamborghini. Well, you have to make tweaks. You've got to tweak that engine. You've got to make sure that it's running optimally. Otherwise, you're just putting gas in the tank, and for what? So a lot of people just throw money at PPC because they've seen guys like us talk about how it's a winning solution. But it's much more surgical than that. And, that's what, in all of our conversations, the fact that you've got these R&D teams that are doing all this research and coming up with, the best surgical tactics to move the needle and get people more bang for their buck, more juice out of the lemon, so to speak. That's really where it's so important. And, I think that's what a lot of people don't understand, is that it's not just enough to set up some willy-nilly PPC campaign with generic search terms to try and target a mass market. you may get some lead flow, but it comes down to deal flow. It comes down to how many contracts you get signed, and of those contracts, are they actual investment opportunities where you can dispose of the property? So being surgical in your targeting, is really the most crucial part to making sure that you're not just pissing money away on something to just cross it off your list and say, yeah, I'm doing that. So it's always a challenge, and there's always some sort of audit that has to take place to get them on track.
Oh, absolutely. It's the same for anything in the business, right? You could say like, oh, I have an acquisitions team. Check. I don't need to do anything with that, right? Or I have, this form of marketing or whatever the case is. Like there's like everybody can do that. The question is how well are you going to do it? I would also add one other layer to that, and it's that we have probably more clients than you would think that even have PPC campaigns that are decently on track, but give up on them. Because they look like too early, or it's usually some combination of budget slash timing. Because obviously, if you have a ton of budget, you don't need as much time to understand how things are performing. If you have a small budget, then you need to give it more time in order to understand. So they're making decisions based on very small sample size. Have you had that experience with any of these companies you ever worked with?
I completely agree with you. Knee-jerk reactions are like playing Russian roulette, to be perfectly honest. And I equate it to, and maybe this makes sense and rings true to some folks out there. But if you came to me and said, "I want to build the pyramids by Tuesday," well, we're going to need billions of dollars. If you came to me and said, "I want to build the pyramids, but we can do it in 100 years," well, clearly we're not going to spend so aggressively so quickly. It's the same thing with studyable data. You have to have studyable data to be able to make proper changes, and not changes out of disparity, changes out of distress. Knee-jerk reactions, they're just no good in getting that studyable data. So you can pour on a bunch of marketing. It's like I did with Tarek. We decided to do a Snapchat and TikTok campaign, and this is when Snapchat and TikTok, well, really when TikTok was first, starting to start to roll. And he had spoken with a marketing manager that thought that this was going to be a brilliant idea. And I was open to it. Again, it's OPM. So I said, hey, let's go. But I don't want to do this for a long time. I want to get that data back quickly. So we spent $90,000 a month for 3 months straight on Snapchat and TikTok. And, we developed a lot of agent relationships at that time out of those campaigns. But at that time, there wasn't a lot of 12-year-olds doing the floss dance that had a house to sell. So if I, I was very quick to be able to have that studyable data over the course of a 3-month capture, spending very heavy to see what was working and what wasn't working. Now, if we were spending, say, $5,000 a month, I would have taken a much longer capture to see that studyable data, 10, 12 months, maybe more, to be able to get that same amount of studyable data back to say, wow, this really is or isn't working. So that's the biggest, it's a big hurdle. A lot of people turn on their PPC, they let it run for a few weeks, and they say, well, this isn't working. And Google just doesn't work like that. Google has a learning process where it's got to go through and really kind of cultivate your campaigns and get your conversions going. And, when you do make changes to a campaign, it goes back into learning again. So there's all these things that you have to take into account. Google is extremely smart and very intuitive, but you have to give it a chance to be able to do that. And Google has to capture that data itself to be able to tweak those campaigns and get into a sweet spot for you. And you've got to have that studyable data before you go in and start making any of these changes that you may or may not be right on because you don't have enough data to study. So it really does take 3 to 6 months, to be honest. And again, it comes back to how much you're spending. If you're spending heavier, 3 months. If you're just tiptoeing through it, it could take 6 or 8 months to get that studyable data back. But you have to be willing to make that investment. It's like, pulling up to a roulette table at the casino. If you're a gambler, I'm not, but if you're a gambler, you have to be willing to lose that money. With PPC, you have to be willing to put that money into education. And that education is that studyable data. You have to be able to learn what's working, what isn't working, and give it enough time before you make those changes. So, and it's a big challenge. A lot of people, knee-jerk reactions, they pull the plug too quickly, or they dial their budget back and they say, well, it's not working, so let's only spend a few $100 a week. And that changes the entire process. And that's just not, that's not advisable. to be honest.
Yeah, you're kind of touching on something that I tell my team over and over again, and our clients honestly too. Is that basically every marketing campaign has two goals. You have to at least accomplish one of them, and those goals are to learn and to get results. And there should never be a situation where you don't get both of those, or where you don't get one of those, right? Even if it failed, there should be some lesson that's going to help you get a better return on investment in the future from your marketing. If you have too small of a sample size, then you don't get either, right? You don't have time to get the results, and then you don't have, well, let me rephrase that. Like, you can get the results. Like, we have clients that probably would only give the campaigns a month, and they start, and then in the first month it goes awesome, and then they believe. But then for every one of those, there's somebody else who has, a month. Uh, I thought about it this weekend. It's almost like getting pregnant. It's like somebody asked, like, how long does it take to get pregnant? It's like, I don't know. Like, it could happen the first month, but just because it didn't doesn't mean you should give up, right?
No, that's very true. Yeah, no, but at the end of the day, if you get that studyable data, you can make, educated decisions, and even if you think, oh, I've watched YouTube, I know how to do this, or I've talked to some people, I've taken some meetings, I know how to do this. That's great. But every campaign is going to be a little bit different. Every market's going to be a little bit different. And if you don't have that data coming back to you that you can really study and follow to see what's working and what isn't, it's just like having KPIs and acquisitions or dispositions. If you start somebody out in their first week and they didn't hit their KPIs by Friday, you're not going to fire them, right? They're still learning, and so is Google. So you have to have that studyable data so that you can make educated decisions to benefit your business. Otherwise, it's just not beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to dig into what some of that data is in your opinion. But one thing first is we also have some different classifications that we have. We have this like course that we give to clients that kind of teaches them some of these principles. And one of those principles is the principle of being data driven versus data blinded. And the difference is a lot of people who are blinded by data, they think they're data driven because all of these knee jerk decisions are based on some type of data. Like the data being, I spent 10 grand and I haven't gotten a deal, or
That's usually the leading one because nobody's really looking at hardcore data. They're looking at, well, I spent this, I haven't made that, so it's just not going to be for me.
exactly. So that's what I would call data blinded. And the distinction for me is it's kind of like it's like finance versus accounting. It seems like a lot of people are doing accounting, right? They're looking at like what happened in my campaigns. There's not a lot of people forecasting, like looking at trends. What's this going to look at? Because being data driven is using the data, but the lazy thing to do is just assume in the future you're always going to get what you always got. The real experience and skill comes through looking at a data set, understanding what could be cut from it, understanding the trends underlying it, understanding the sample size parameters, and kind of using that to make a call about the future, because it's the future that we care about when we're making a decision, not the past. I'm curious, what are some of those metrics for you? Because obviously the one that everybody cares about is how much money did I make and how much money did I spend, right? But there's all these metrics in between there. What are the metrics that you would look at primarily for a marketing campaign?
Well, not only am I looking at how many clicks I'm getting from the ads, I'll keep it high level. How many clicks that I'm getting from the ads, but to my landing pages. But from there, how many form fills am I getting on those landing pages, and how many phone calls am I getting from those landing pages? I dissect which one's better for me. Everybody's got a form out there, but are you really driving home the phone number? If you fill out a form online and you submit that form, somebody who's selling their home, now you potentially set yourself up for ghosts and trying to chase people, versus an inbound phone call is a much more highly converted lead because it's hot. It's right now. They were ready to talk. They're kind of aggressive in nature by picking up the phone. I also find that a lot of the inbound phone calls we get, there's a vast majority of those that are older folks. They don't trust the form fill. They don't know where this information is going, and they're just not comfortable with it, or they're just not comfortable using their phone enough or their computer enough to sit there and type away. So an inbound phone call, not only are you getting a hot lead, but oftentimes you're finding a more targeted seller on those phone calls. So I have something called Hotjar that I install on all of my landing pages and websites. And what that does is it enables you to replay every single visit to your website. And with heat maps, you can see where they're scrolling, where they're stopping, what they're reading. You can see when they exit and you can see, wow, I lost them right there. So I've got to fix that. And you can really, increase your funnels and increase your conversions that way. And then, keeping it high level, how many people that are actually converting from the ad to the landing page and into your CRM or into your sales floor. That's the biggest thing for me, because at that point, then I can take a look at the sales process and really analyze where the most amount of our leads are coming from. With PPC, I pass the UTM codes along into the CRM so that anytime somebody is filling out a form from a specific search term, that is popping up for my acquisitions rep to see that they searched for, how do I sell my inherited home, or how do I sell my pre-foreclosure home? And the cohesion of that means that my acquisitions rep is going to have a different opening line on every script. Hi, we're the pre-foreclosure specialists. I understand you have a pre-foreclosure home to sell. Hi, we're the inherited home specialists. I understand you have an inherited home to sell. And as opposed to every other shop out there that just says, hey, I heard you're looking for a cash offer. Well, that's what we do. It's very generic versus being very specific. And, there's just in dating, everybody has, what they're looking for. I want a guy with blonde hair and blue eyes, she says, right? It's very much the same in finding some, as a homeowner, finding a company that you feel is exactly what you're looking for. And if you find that, it really does start to put the blinders on, and it keeps you as a seller from going and filling out a bunch of other forms or contacting other shops, because you really feel like you found your home, you found your place. This is specifically what I was looking for, and this is specifically what they focus on. So I really want to work with this company. So that cohesion aside, I can now look at the KPIs of my sales team and make sure that that they are making enough touch points, that they are getting enough talk time with these folks. The longer the conversation, the more rapport and credibility can be built, so the easier it is to do the sale. I make sure that my reps are taking them to the internet, because in sales, the more senses you appeal to, the easier it is to close a deal. So if it's just an audible sale on the phone, you're only hitting 1 sense point. So if you can get them in front of the computer and have them see some of the comparables, have them see why their house isn't worth the one down the street that sold for more because it was already rehabbed, you're appealing to a visual sense as well. So that's when I really start focusing on the sales side of things. But as far as PPC is concerned, I am constantly adding new negative keywords to the list to kind of remove the noise from what's coming in, and really making sure that the leads that are coming in are a really good fit, so that I don't burn out my sales team talking to people that are not a good fit. They're money minded, or their house is not distressed, and neither are they. So there's no pain, there's no motivation. So I'm very strict on that. But my ad copy on my PPC ads is really where it all starts. It's the search term, but then the ad copy really plays into that. And we talk a lot about PPC just with Google, but don't forget about Bing. I do have a lot of success, even though it's a smaller pool. If there are only 10 people a day on Bing searching for how to sell my pre-foreclosed home, in Naples, Florida, I want those 10 people. And for the folks out there that aren't utilizing Bing, I win. So there's a lot of different things that you can do. You can do masthead ads with YouTube. Voice search is picking up a lot. So starting to skew your not just your ad copy, but your messaging on your websites to be more conversational. That's something that can get you more traction as well. So there's just so many different, mediums to be able to get out to these folks. But it really comes down to cohesion as far as I'm concerned. Search terms, ad copy, landing pages, scripting. And that's really what you can, make sure to drive those conversions, which is what I'm always looking for. How many people hit my landing page? How many people filled out the form? How many people got through to the sales team? Those are the most important metrics. Impressions, that's great. Fantastic. You're definitely getting your brand going. But if they're not actually clicking on your ad, if they're not actually going to your landing page, and you're not getting good click-throughs and good conversions, then that's where you need to start making tweaks and making changes. But again, back to what we were talking about, you're not going to know unless you give it enough time to have that studyable data to be able to take a look at it, and utilizing things like I mentioned, Hotjar, and really getting surgical on, what happens when they get to your landing page, and changing your ad copy, and changing where there's calls to action. A great PPC campaign with a bad landing page and a bad sales process, great. You got to get a lot of people going to your landing page, but there's no conversion coming from it. So there's multiple parts of the funnel that need to be addressed and really need to be surgical and looked at to improve the overall mechanism.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and as I understand it, basically the way you're looking at this is a funnel, right? In the top, we have how much money we're putting in. That generates impressions, and from there you get clicks, and then from there you get you get conversions, and from there you have qualified leads and all those things, right? So you're basically just looking at where in the funnel is this breaking down. Let's just say you're a business owner, though. I've seen a lot of issues with this, right? Like someone pulls a pot jar and they're like, oh, like 70% of the people don't scroll beyond the top fold of my page. I have an issue there, but they don't have the context, right? Maybe they're doing awesome there compared to somewhere else, or they're like, oh, my landing page has this bounce rate. It's a problem. Or, I only convert this many of my leads, or my cost per lead is this high, or whatever the case is. And I think a lot of people kind of, they look at that information, but they have no context, right? So they could be looking at something that's completely fine, and then they're thinking there's a problem there, and then they're kind of running in circles trying to fix that problem, and really they have a problem somewhere else. What would you say is the best way to alleviate that? How, when you're looking at these things, do you know that something's working or not working?
A lot of split testing and then reverse engineering. So if you've got a funnel, right, we're looking at a funnel and you've got all these different layers to your funnel, and part of that funnel is working, well, reverse engineer why that's working. Then you can kind of make pivots on your other pieces of the funnel to be more cohesive with the part that is working. You can't just say, well, this part of the funnel isn't working, let's try and figure out why. Well, look at what is, reverse engineer that, and then get some cohesion going, because it's a funnel. Everything's got to funnel down. So there has to be cohesion in that. So, and then do a lot of split testing. A lot of people out there, they're running a campaign and they say, you know what, I'm going to make changes. And the campaign's running okay. So I'm going to go make changes to that campaign. Split test. Keep that campaign running and have another one run alongside of it, so you can really see who wins the race. Imagine if you were in NASCAR and you felt like if you made some changes to the car that's already in first place, you could even beat your own time. Well, what if you made those changes and now you lose the race? If you had the ability to clone that car and still win the race for your brand, but work on another tweak for a cloned car to see if you can beat your lap time, wouldn't you do that? Wouldn't you not take the risk on losing that first place position? So I do a lot of split testing. I'm constantly trying out different things. I'm trying out different landing pages. I completely replicate funnels and make tweaks to the replicated funnel to see what's working and what isn't working. The whole adage, if it ain't broke, why fix it? Even if you feel like it's working okay, keep that in place and split test. And that enables you to kind of see where you're failing and kind of come up with new ideas. And you're not so worried about screwing it up because you already have one that is working. So as you work on these split tested campaigns, experiment. See what works the best for you and what's getting you the most amount of conversions. And just because, if you're out there, just because things that are working for Brandon and I, you don't have to do that. It could be something entirely different in your specific market that you crack a code on, and good for you. If you want to keep it a secret sauce, go for it. If you want to share with everybody, the community that has open arms. But it's all about cracking codes and moving forward. And with me, split testing is a huge part of what I do. I'm constantly coming up with different ideas and having my teams build those ideas out alongside of what's already in place and already working. And if we can crack a code, well, then we'll implement. Right. So testing a lot and then reverse engineering what is working and then applying it to those areas of weakness is something that I highly suggest.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so you're basically suggesting that the benchmark is yourself, just in a different scenario, right? Because you can only know that it's hard to say, like, this page has a bounce rate of X. Is that good or bad? It's a lot easier to say, well, how does that compare to this other page that we're testing against it? So then we can understand and reverse engineer what's different. Yeah, we've had a standard in our company for a long time, because the toughest thing about split testing is it takes data, and data costs money. every single bit of data that you gather, right? So split test costs more money than just what it does to set up. So that's where I think the real challenge that people have with split testing is not enough data volume to pull it off. And I think if you're spending without testing, then you're basically only accomplishing one thing, right? You're accomplishing results, but not the learning that's going to help you get better results in the future. So we've had this standard, and for the past 5 years, as far as I'm aware, we haven't spent a single dollar within Bateman Collective that's not on some type of split test, meaning every single dollar is either spent on the control or the experiment. And sometimes that experiment might be getting 10% of the spend. Sometimes that experiment could be data that we're collecting of lead quality of this keyword versus that keyword, where it's not like a quote unquote test per se. But it's always to basically, if you spend money and you get results, but you don't also get learning from that, then I consider it only partially utilized budget.
I I agree. It's and that goes across all areas of business. You don't think that Apple just makes tweaks to the current iPhone and rolls out with a tweak to that. They have hundreds of versions that they're working on to see which one, and they're split testing against all of them to see which one's going to be the next version of the iPhone. So, everybody's split testing. You look at cars and how they're doing those crash tests where we all get lost in watching those cars ram into a concrete wall. Well, they're split testing. They're split testing crumple zones. They're split testing airbag deployment. They're split testing all these different things so that then they can roll out. They're trying to crack codes. Then they can roll out the most optimal version of that car or of that phone. And it's the same thing with your sales team. It's the same thing with your ads, your ad copy, your landing page. It really kind of boils down to every aspect of your business is split testing. And even when I'm hiring somebody in for a new role, I will give them, before they come on board, I give them very specific tasks to see how they do. And I have my teams doing those exact same tasks at the exact same time. And if this new person can keep up with them without any training in my shop, if this new person can supersede what they're doing in my shop, or if they just are completely lost. And those are good indicators as to how it's going to fare in a team environment, or if they're going to be a winning person for me. So there's even split testing in on that side of things. But the one thing that I do notice a lot in our industry and in working in wholesale real estate and real estate investing and fix and flip and looking for leads. So many people just focus on the acquisition side of things and looking for distressed sellers and distressed properties. And that's really where PPC has been so driven within wholesale and real estate investing, is to acquire properties and sellers. And nobody focuses on PPC for buyers, and really focusing on hot buyers that say, I want to buy something in that area right now, as opposed to, and I'm a cartel boss for Investor Lift. I think Tarek was the original user of Investor Lift. So by appropriation into the company, when I first started using it for the company, I guess I was the first official implementer of it. But as you blast out a property on Investor Lift, that buyer didn't say 2 minutes ago that they want a property, whether it be in that area or not in that area. They didn't say that. They're a buyer, they signed up, and that's all, fine and well. Maybe they're window shopping or tire kickers, but they didn't say that they want it right now. So also deploying PPC into the buying side of things, and using social media to target Facebook groups for doctors, target Facebook groups, or even in your ad copy in Google, we can target household income. Targeting people that make over, $150,000 or $200,000 a year, on the buy side. You can get these motivated buyers that they're chomping at the bit to buy something right now. And once you have that shopping list, that buy box, the buying criteria from that buyer, it's very easy for you to either go through your current inventory of contracts, reverse wholesale by finding other people's contracts and connecting them with those buyers, JV deals for those buyers, or as a property comes in from your acquisitions PPC efforts, exactly that this property fits this guy, Gerald, who called yesterday and said he wants a property in this area now. So this is a very easy mechanism to be able to do that. And a lot of people overlook that. And that's one thing that's been able to keep me moving in working with all my students, is to focus on those hot and ready buyers, and not just, buying a buyer's list or cultivating a buyer's list, or using a platform that has a lot of buyers in there, like Investor Lift with over 4 million cash buyers. Um, and those are great platforms. Everything, all of what I just said is fantastic, but you need to also be spending a little bit, whether it's Bing or Google or both, or doing social targeted, retargeting ads on Facebook to user groups and things where you're really targeting buyers. We can all lock up a property. We can all get contracts, but if you can't dispose of that property, you're not monetizing. So it's kind of like that old adage: if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there to hear it, did it really make a sound? Well, you can work your butt off and get a contract and get this property, but if it never sells, did it really happen? Because nobody made any money. All you did is spin your wheels and waste time. So the disposition side is something that a lot of people don't focus on. They just feel that they can use platforms. But if you actually implement PPC into finding hot buyers and really going after social groups and things like that to find buyers that say, I want to buy a property today, here's my shopping list, go find it. You have this great relationship with a buyer because you're servicing their need, and it's a Denny's mentality. They want it hot, they want it right now, and you're able to service that. So a lot of people overlook that side of things too. And there's more KPIs that go into that, different landing pages, et cetera. The whole nother build out. But there's two sides to wholesaling real estate, which is what my primary focus is. That's acquisitions and dispositions. And if you're really only focusing your marketing and your advertising dollars on acquiring properties, great, good for you. You got a bunch of contracts, but you're really kind of crossing your fingers that you're going to be able to dispose of that product. So I'm big on implementing PPC into both sides of the equation, and constantly looking for new, hot, ready buyers that can give me a shopping list so I can go shopping. And that skews my marketing as well. I'm going to add in different markets. I'm going to add in different targets, so that I can fulfill that buyer's shopping list. And it just speeds up the mechanism, makes everything more efficient. And it's very important.
Yeah, that is very interesting. And we've historically focused on sellers, because I think for a long time that's been kind of the hard part, right? You used to be able to write like house for sale on a slip of paper, throw it into the wind, and it'd be sold. And it's not that way anymore. So we've been working on some buyer campaigns too. So I mean, if any of our clients are listening to this, like we're eager to start doing some more testing with this buyer side. Although I have a couple challenging questions for you, that I'm really curious to to hear how you view these things. Because we used to do some buyer marketing. One of the tough things that I've seen with buyer marketing is, how do you measure the real impact that it's making? The only way I could theoretically know how to measure that is you bring on this buyer, and over the next infinity years, how many properties do they buy from you, and how much more do they buy them for you from than the second highest bidder would have been. And that's the return. But
Yeah, no, I'm leaning on the CRM for that. So, I'm pulling all kinds of metrics from the CRM for that. I had a conversation with one of my students a week or so ago, and I said, who's your biggest buyer? And all three of the people on the phone, two of them were C-level positions. The other one was the dispositions manager, said, oh, Jerry, that guy, Jerry, whatever his name is. We talk to him on the phone all the time. And I said, okay, I want you to go into your CRM and I want you to pull up how many contracts Jerry has closed, how many things he's actually taken to the finish line versus any other buyer. And they pulled those metrics, and there was some other guy, some other company that was actually buttering their bread. Jerry just wastes their time. The amount of contracts that Jerry actually purchased, as opposed to made offers on and had questions on and stayed top of mind for that specific wholesaler, was surmountable compared to the guy that they would have put in third or fourth position. So it's not necessarily who takes up the most amount of your time, it's who closes deals and who actually gets these things to the finish line, who monetizes. So there's a lot of different metrics, right? Who makes the most offers? Whose offers are the highest offers? Whose offers are the lowest offers? And those are good things to study. But for me, I want to know who's actually getting these things to the finish line, who's actually making money with me. And those are the ones that I want to send a gift basket to. Those are the ones that I want to treat special. I want to make sure that my CRM is set up so that I can have an automated text message go out on their birthday. and say, happy birthday from the Green Elephant Development Disposition Team. Let's get you a property for your birthday. Please update your buyer's criteria here with a quick link. And they go in, they update their buyer's criteria. And now we know that they, have a slightly skewed buy box than they had, 2 months ago. But, really studying who gets things across the finish line, who's wasting your time, who wastes your disposition time with multiple counters and multiple negotiation to never get across that finish line. Those are kind of the metrics that I look at on the buy side from the sales perspective. On the PPC side, again, it's very similar to the acquisition side on distressed sellers, conversions, click-throughs, and again, studying landing pages and seeing what's really working. So a lot of those metrics from the PPC, that all rings true. But who you work with is probably the most crucial part. And for me, it's all about efficiencies. And if I can chew the fat and get rid of the people that are just noise and just like to take up my time and ask a million questions to never get a property across the finish line, that's time that I am taking away from these folks that do get things across the finish line for me. And if I can tighten up that process, hell, I'd rather have 2 30-minute phone calls a day with 2 buyers that get properties across the finish line than 20 calls with people that just waste my time. It's just you don't burn people out that way on the sales side of things. And, it's just a higher efficiency and it's just better quality all the way around.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is like half a counterpoint and half like exposing the genius of what you're doing. Just some interesting data that I don't know if you know Eli Fisher from Audantic at all. If anybody listening doesn't know him, you should definitely know Eli. Really great mind when it comes to data. And he was showing me some data that he looked at, kind of analyzing some of what you're talking about, like these buyer profiles. Granted, he wasn't looking at all at how much of a pain in the butt were they to the people that they bought properties from, because he doesn't know that, right? He just knows kind of what the spreads look like and all that kind of stuff. And what I thought was really interesting was he had this graph kind of showing different buckets for numbers of property that people buy per year and the percentage of ARV that they buy it at. And the very clear trend was the more properties they buy, the deeper discount they buy them at, versus the people who bought like 1 or 2 properties that year. They averaged 97% of ARV that they purchased the properties at. And this is buying properties like as investments. I think you had it filtered down to LLCs or something like that. So anyways, I thought that was super interesting. But I guess my point is a lot of people think like your best buyer is the career buyer, the person who buys the most properties. And in some ways, yes, from a volume standpoint, but a lot of this advertising can help you reach those other people that maybe don't have a buying history. These are the first few investment properties they're buying, and they might buy that property for 10 grand more than the career investor.
And that's exactly right. And going back to the reverse engineering that we were talking about, being able to analyze those buyers that are buying at a higher percentage, not just the ones that get across the finish line. So it doesn't really stop there. Who gets it across the finish line? Great. But what is the percentage of those folks in your CRM that you can look at a KPI and they say, these are the most ones that get it across the finish line? Who is buying at the deepest discount and who is buying at the highest percentage, highest, cents on the dollar? And then reverse engineering those audiences, those personas, and really leaning into your marketing for those specific personas to clone them and make more of that type of buyer in your disposition process. And it's the same thing back with acquisitions and developing personas for your targeted sellers and looking for distressed sellers and distressed homes in different areas. Being able to reverse engineer where your traffic is coming from. And of that traffic, where's the sweet spot of the types of people? And then really then going back and targeting those specific personas and targeting those specific people, household income, areas, and again, it just really comes back to studyable data. We've been talking about this the whole time. The more surgical you can get with that studyable data, the more pinpointed you can be on your marketing, which means the higher quality of your entire infrastructure, whether it be acquisitions or dispositions, the people that are on the other end of the phone from your company and your staff. It's just a much more elevated conversation because the mechanism is so much easier because you've gone through and done that targeting. These are the kind of sellers I want to talk to. These are the kind of buyers I want to talk to, because then you've got this seamless process and it's like an assembly line.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Well, I think you've added tons of value today. I would love to. We'll probably have to do another one of these because I want to dig into some of the acquisition stuff, but we're running a little bit long here.
I know, right? Every time you and I hop on the phone, every time you and I are talking, it turns into like an hour, 2 hour long conversation because we get in the weeds on this stuff because it really is interesting. And I know some of you guys out there are like, God, these guys are a couple of nerds. Um, I can tell you that if there's anything to be nerdy about, it's how to make more money, and it's how to analyze the tools that you're utilizing on how to make them sharper for your whole process and for your wallet. And that's it's. I'm happy to be nerdy about marketing. I'm happy to be nerdy about creating more revenue and being a scientist, a mad scientist to put this stuff together. It's like the game of Tetris. You can put things together and barely get through the game, or you can get really good at it and constantly be leveling up. And that's something that just is passionate for me because I have a sign in every office that I have that says always moving forward, and the other sign says never ending improvement. And never ending improvement means not resting on your laurels, not saying this is good enough for now. If it's good, it can be great. If it's great, it can be perfect. So always trying to work harder, always trying to split test and reverse engineer and getting yourself to level up and level up again and then level up again. I do everything in phases, and I try to, once I get to a certain plateau, I try to break that phase. It's like building a skyscraper. If you're going to build a 20-floor skyscraper, you got to make sure the first floor is so solid. The second floor is equally as solid. And you really have to try and break those floors before you add another one. So it's constantly split testing, constantly adding more platforms, more sources, more mediums, different ways to get lead sources coming in. And for me, I'm also monetizing all my leads. And this is something that people overlook. If you have a distressed seller contacting you and you can't come to terms with an offer on them, well, did the roof need to be replaced? Did the flooring need to be replaced? Was the chimney messed up? These are all leads that a roofing company, a flooring company, a chimney fireplace company, they want those leads. So you can turn around and develop relationships with some of these companies and start selling them your leads. There's just so many ways to monetize and not just put your advertising budget back in your pocket without even doing a wholesale deal. But you can roll that money back into marketing. You can expand your marketing budget. You can split test and run simultaneous campaigns to see which one's working. So there's just so many things out there that people need a larger perspective on. They're just focusing on distressed sellers and acquisition leads. And if they don't work, they go in the round file, they get trashed, they get marked dead in the CRM. Why? That's a motivated seller with a screwed up property. That property has to be repaired at some point by someone. So that's a lead that a roofing company would pay for, or a lead that a flooring company would pay for, or a window company would pay for. And you can monetize those leads and put the money back in your pocket and continue to grow your marketing, or put more money into better targeting and do more split testing. So there's a million things to this, and we'll definitely have to do another one of these so we can dive even deeper. But it's always a pleasure hanging out with you and talking shop with you, dude.
Oh, absolutely. I think we're just aligned on a few different things. Like what you're talking about here is really in line with one of our core values as a company, which is what we call compound innovation. Like the yeah, I think it's easy to overlook how much of an impact that makes over time. It's just like, who was it that said like compound interest is like the eighth wonder of the world or something? I think if you look at like businesses, really, what does a business have that's valuable? People will say like, oh, it's the track record, it's the revenue, it's whatever the case is. There's only really three things that people buy when they buy a business. They buy the people, they buy the relationships, like brand or, with customers, and they buy the IP. And arguably the IP is the most valuable piece of that entire puzzle if you've invested quite a bit into building that. So I totally agree on so many levels. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
You can reach me directly by just going to the website, forrestblackburn.com. There's a lot of resources on there to help people move the needle forward with tools and things that they can utilize, different platforms, different services. to help them move forward. And they can also book a call with me directly to have a consultation. I do coaching and mentoring. I have a master course that was just released through InvestorLift. InvestorLift just launched a new thing called Masterclass. And there's a course on there that you guys can buy and download and watch over a bag of Cheetos at 2:00 in the morning if you need to. But it's really a blueprint on how I'm able to scale businesses very quickly and pull the right levers to be able to generate revenue swiftly. But yeah, forrestblackburn.com is my site. Everything's on there. I'm always available. I'm always looking to help and share and collaborate. So you can find me there. And then on all social platforms, it's all Forrest Blackburn. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know what they say: if you need something done, find a busy person to do it. That's you, right? The person who should be the least available, but simultaneously is the most available, if anybody needs you.
I am available, and I'm very high level, so I do a lot of delegation. So I have a lot of great people at my disposal to be able to help you and facilitate what the best needs are for your specific business. Every business is different, if you need PPC assistance, I'm always going to defer you to Brandon. He's got and there's a resource link on my site that you can go to right now. If you're looking at my site, you can click on that. It'll take you right to Bateman Collective. But there's good people, and there's people that just say they're good people. And I've been fortunate enough to work with Brandon, and I strongly suggest you guys give him a ring if you're looking to make some big sweeping changes to your revenue.
Oh, that's fantastic. The unsolicited testimonial is always something I love. Thank you, Forrest, for your time and everything. You've been very generous with it. And for everybody else listening to the show, I will see you next week.